So taking the two drivers with some of the biggest noise in the product launches this year, the Qi4D core model and the Triple Diamond Max from Callaway. So both designed for consistency but low spin, so therefore stability and distance. I'm going to pitch them against the GT2, which is last year's best head in sales-wise. Let's see who comes out on top. So I'm going to do the testing with my own shaft in it, or the one that we have on the wall, swing rate the same, loft the same, basically built to my specs. But what I'm not going to do, I'm not going to go full out of these. I'm going to swing just at or just over 100 miles an hour. So something that's a little bit more relatable from a speed point of view, and we'll see who wins out from a distance standpoint. So starting out with the Callaway. So very clean, simple look, really back to the AI smoke from a visual point of view. You know, the Triple Diamond Max sit a little bit flatter lie than the standard models, slightly more open as a setup, so still around that kind of Vodacom's better player kind of format. But initial sort of visuals of what we've seen in the bay is quite a strong flight out of these. So, you know, I think they've really got the flight down and forwards out of this head versus previous models. So as with a lot of the back-weighted heads, for me, I find it opens the face. So my first one is often right. So where there is that light center and separated weight, definitely, as I start down, opens the face up a little bit. So it makes it, you can argue, a little bit more fade bias, but a lot of the more stable heads, back-weighted heads, I miss right on my first swings. That's a perfect example of that. So, nice sound, it's not too harsh. The composite, it's a kind of a punchy note off the face. There's no tinniness to it, but very, very solid sound and feel. So something that, you know, you haven't got any of those sort of harsh, high-pitched notes that, if you go back to FT5, heads like that were really ear-splitting. Just a very solid sound and feel through the ball. Yeah, and visually quite a flat launch. I mean, something I was expecting from this simply because it's what I've seen when I've been fitting with them in the bay. Traditionally, Callaway heads, we've seen a higher launch out of. We've used them to maintain a bit of launch angle and keep spin down. So this is certainly low spin, but it's definitely brought the launch down versus previous models as well. Yeah, it's a noticeably low launch. I play an 8 degree in my TSR3. And if anything, this 9 degree is bringing the flight down a little bit more. So really quite a punchy trajectory. Yeah. So I've made a point of getting a little bit more flight onto that. But yeah, as you'll see in the data in a moment, this is a seriously low spin head. So Qi4D, I've moved the weights forward because it's the lower spin position, and where we're looking at the Triple Diamond Max and the Callaway, it brings it a little more into line rather than weight back as a little bit more, it's higher spin position than the Triple Diamond Max was. So about getting that lower flight, stable forgiving head, but lower flight, hence the weights forward. So, you know, definitely better spin consistency we've seen from this in the bay, and that's been noticeably higher than previous models. But how will it stack up versus those two? Well, let's check it out now. So first up, the visual change, that almost sort of champagne-y grey kind of crown, but it's a very clean overall visual at the top. And actually in the core model, it being a little bit smaller again, rather than bigger in the Qi35, I think that's the reason that a lot of the torpedoes didn't go into it, that bigger footprint, whereas this being a little bit neater, definitely a good thing. Does sit just a little bit on its backside, a little open, where there's that bit of camber on the sole that just makes it want to sit a hair open, but you can put it more upright with the hosel settings as well. But all in all, you know, that line on the top of the face really kind of frames the face well, but a very, you know, simple, clean looking head. So straight away, you've got the composite face. It's a very different sound than the Callaway. The Callaway's a little bit of a duller note. This has definitely a bit more pitch to it. And I think one would say probably a slightly less solid feel than the Callaway head. Callaway head's a real kind of thump into the back of the ball. This almost feels like there's a little bit more surrounding it, but you have got those weights heel and toe on this, which is going to contribute towards that. Just flip that one over a little bit, but very much a higher pitch note. So a very, very different experience to hit with. Now that wasn't a particularly good swing at all. Ball speed pretty solid. It actually didn't knuckle spin, considering I flipped that one over, it didn't knuckle spin off too much, which is nice. And that's actually something that's a real kind of nice thing to see from a TaylorMade head. Helps really find the middle, much more solid hit, much more solid feel. But again, it doesn't feel, I think, as powerful off the face as the Callaway does. I think it's got a nice sound to it, it's got a lively note. It definitely feels like the club's given me a little bit back, but it hasn't got that absolute solidity to the Callaway. I think if you like a bit of guts in the strike, the feel off the Callaway head might be a bit nicer. You know, there's a lively sound to it, but it's definitely a very different feel. I think it's going to be, some players are really going to enjoy this note versus the Callaway and vice versa, because there's a heck of a difference between them. And you think they both got a lot of composite in there. You know, that's potentially where Callaway, with that multi-layer face, that backing to the face, that will play a big part in that sound and feel. You know, where rather than it just being titanium face, it's got a composite back, and then it's got another polymer layer in the back as well, which is almost like a Kevlar-esque material. And that's a big element to that sound being muted down. I think to hit with, I would say the Callaway, if anything, maybe feels a little bit safer, you feel a little bit less twist on it. This one you definitely get a bit more feedback from. So I would say for players wanting to get that sensation of strike, and the head gives you a little bit more responsiveness, whereas the Callaway almost sort of dulls it down. Again, partly to do with that material on the back of the face. But you know, this head you feel a little bit more vibration. So you know, for players wanting feedback, TaylorMade is definitely a good option. So what have we learned? Now this is relative to me swinging these clubs at that speed with my delivery. So it's going to be slightly different for everyone. However, are there any trends that we can see? Well, ultimately, ball speed wise, the TaylorMade isn't quite as fast, or for that batch of hot shots isn't quite as fast. But I would say that is also something that we've seen in the fitting bay, is that there are times it really performs for ball speed, but actually consistency of ball speed player to player, maybe it's down a little bit. But there's one number that stands out to me like a sore thumb in terms of the tolerance to consistency on spin rate. And in the past, there have been big criticisms of TaylorMade for this, and that it's really flared up out of a heel strike and knuckled out of a toe strike. That is a remarkably consistent spin. You know, that tolerance on spin there. You know, the others are pretty good. They're around 200, 300. They're good on both counts. But 84 is incredibly low. And if we open that up, you know, they're all low spin, but you know, there's a little bit of fluctuation in launch angle based on a couple of strike changes, but that spin consistency is remarkable. If we look at where the Callaway was, then there's a couple of real knuckleballs in there. So the solid hits are in a safe place, but if you get that a little higher, a little toe side, that's pretty volatile for spin. So if you're high speed and looking to get that spin down and get a bit of stability, then the Callaway could be a remarkable head for you because it's just going forwards. But woe betide anyone who gets that on high toe, because you know, that's 20% of spin, 30% of spin almost lost between those two swings. You know, angle of attack a little less upward. Now you might expect a knuckle to come from a more upward angle of attack. It's a degree more closed face. But those are pretty small differences. To see that much spin differential, if you're looking to avoid a knuckleball, then do not go to the Triple Diamond Callaway, because it's going to get you that low spin probably quicker than you want it. Actually, the TaylorMade for maintaining spin and consistency of spin, you know, if you pull those weights back, you're going to lift the flight up a little bit more. Actually looks like an incredibly safe bet. So kudos to TaylorMade for that, because that was a heck of a change from previous models. But in the ball speed stakes, there's a little bit more of a drop-off versus what we see with the Callaway. And that, if I scroll down on the screen here, you can see where the Titleist maintains ball speed well, but for one swing where I've caught that in the wrong spot in the head, and that has taken spin off. Again, go back a few generations to the Titleist head, you wouldn't have seen that at all. It's the high flary spin that we're used to seeing. But again, if you get it on the little bit high toe, it takes that spin off. It's a much stronger head than we've seen in the past, but hence it was such a good all-round performer for distance and ball speed. But there's a bit more launch consistency from that head than the other two heads. So overall, again, going back to what do we learn from that, there aren't really any bad heads. I think the TaylorMade improving performance across the face for that spin, that's made a massive difference. The distance consistency is way, way better. But they're both lower spin heads than that GT2. Not necessarily a massive surprise, but strong flight. And I think it'll be interesting as we go through some of the other comparisons. You know, that's really about, there are more players with more club speed wanting a bit of stability, and actually does that lower spin stable performance something that they've all gone searching for this year? You know, face value looks like it. If we look at the dispersion pattern, now there's a single outlier from the Callaway where I've got the face open a little bit, and there's a single outlier from the TaylorMade there. But take those out, the TaylorMade has, for me, a little bit more left-right dispersion. So what I found, it was easier to square the face on the TaylorMade. I could get that rotating through and squaring off a little bit more easily, but perhaps a little less control of the face for me with those. Whereas the Titleist and the Callaway, you can take the outlier out, much tighter left-right dispersion. If you're thinking between, that is a pretty narrow fairway width on here. You've got just under 15 yards to the right and 10 yards to the left, 5 yards to the left even. So you've got a 20-yard wide fairway, and you bar a couple just off the left edge. They're comfortably within that 20-yard radius on the Titleist, and that one, again, we're all within that, other than that one outlier with the Callaway. So face regulation will vary player to player, but for me, there's really noticeable patterns between the two heads. So if you struggle to get the face squared off, actually, and tend to leave it open, actually the TaylorMade looks like a good option for you. If you're looking to avoid left, potentially the Callaway. So the way the weight distribution within the head sits, that is going to suit particular patterns through the ball quite a lot, and very noticeable difference in that dispersion pattern. At the Callaway head, if we look in the back there, the weight is in that side. That's in the neutral setting, not the fade one. So it's not like I put the weight out of the toe to get the fade gearing and to help lengthen that face up. It's in the neutral position. So you could even augment that even more with that weight system in the back of the Callaway. So a couple of differences there that actually, from a shot pattern and a shaping point of view, I found really quite a big change there. So back into what we said at the start of the video, which one wins? Now, ultimately, there are slight launch and spin variations. So because of, at this speed, the lower spin on the TaylorMade and the Callaway, I said isolated, taking a couple of numbers off we don't need on the screen. Actually, carry distance, the Titleist is slightly better because it retains a little bit more spin. And because it carries a little bit more, actually the total, so if we normalize ball speed, we pick up 2 miles an hour from the Callaway, 3 to 4 yards, it sits pretty much spot on the same. And we do the same, there's a mile an hour or so there, that's a couple of yards. They're within 1 or 2 yards of one another once you normalize ball speed. However, the carry on the Titleist, because of the higher spin, just sits just a little bit above. So really what we're seeing are, relative to ball speed, if you normalize them all based on the flights, there's not one flight that's hotter or particularly more long than the others. But I would say consistency-wise, the TaylorMade from a spin point of view is better, but from a raw yardage point of view, because it's getting you more ball speed, probably sit with that one. Just, if we're, as you start to ramp club speed up, then that lower spin versus the Titleist starts to win out from a total distance point of view. So if you're saying which head is the longest of all of these, the Callaway, once club speed and ball speed match up, the Callaway just wins out. Slightly hotter for ball speed, slightly hotter for spin. But if you're someone who struggles a little bit for consistency across the face, then actually the Callaway becomes a little volatile. So if you're looking for consistency of the new heads, TaylorMade is better, just a little more consistent on that spin profile. So therefore, carry distances and totals, how far it stays in the air, and the picture flight retains a little bit more stability. So both have their strengths, but if you're a toe striker, definitely don't go with the Callaway. However, if you're looking for ultimate low spin run out yardage, it's a very, very strong head for you. So I hope you've enjoyed that comparison, sort of initial stages of the year. Whilst we're seeing similar distances, we are starting to see a little bit more of a separation in performance and what they promote from a strike point of view between the models. So definitely, get down, test them out, because actually one head versus the other will definitely give you a better set of numbers. So definitely test them out, check them out. If you've enjoyed this, hit the like button, subscribe, and check out actually the product previews we did, which gives you an insight into the real tech behind each of these models.